Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this big guy right here. This is the CRKT Bona Fide. That's right, Bona Fide right there. First off, though, in the name of full disclosure, that is, I want to thank CRKT for sending this guy along. I reached out to them when they dropped their latest catalog, said, hey, I'm interested in this one, this one, this one, this one, and this was one of the this ones. But I told them, as always, I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Might be a gem, might be junk. They still send along. Nonetheless, we have to assume this is the very best quality controlled one of these guys ever, and I'm doing my absolute best not to let that affect the nature or quality of my review. Next thing, let's do some size comparison. Here it is against the Spyderco, wow, the Ontario Rat number 2. Here it is against the Spyderco PM2. And so what we see here is this is actually a reasonably sized knife. Put this up next to the Spyderco Delica. We see here again, this has a fair amount of blade length to it. And in terms of sharpened length, we are actually longer than the Spyderco PM2, even though the handle's a little bit shorter. So there you go. And then actually one other knife that I think is a very relevant comparison here is actually the CRKT Homefront. This is the titanium special edition version of it. But at the same time, what we have here is a relatively similar in terms of overall size and blade length and whatnot. But this is the first generation FieldStrip technology. Wow, language is hard. And this is the second generation. We'll talk about the difference between those a little bit later on. But anyways, that is kind of the biggest news here. This is a Ken Onion design, but more importantly, this is the FieldStrip 2 technology, which allows you to take the knife apart very, very easily, and I'll show that off to you in just a moment. So, first off, let's just go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly, and then jump up into the final conclusions. So, on the good side, to start with, I kind of like this design here. They've got like a two-texture approach, and we saw something similar on the home front here, but it almost adds like a bolstery look to it here. We've got like a pebbly texture here, but it's not full-on rock pattern, right? But then we've got ourselves a more conventional, almost looks blasted sort of bolster going on here, which, you know, hey, looks nice, and it adds a little bit more visual intrigue to what could have otherwise been a gray blob. Next thing, ergonomically speaking, this actually works pretty well in the hand, right? The clip is well designed and it's positioned well, so that it doesn't, dig into anything too much. It works pretty well in the hand. I like this knife a lot in the hand, and ergos are absolutely solid. Next thing, this has a very deep carry clip. What I mean by that is that as you're carrying this guy, only a little tiny bit of it's going to be sticking up out of the pocket, which I appreciate very much and makes the knife a little bit easier to carry, which is great, at least in some situations. Makes it more subtle, certainly. Next thing, blade on this guy. Blade on this is absolutely fine. This particular model has D2 steel. Hooray! Yes, finally, CRKT has discovered D2. This is a steel that is by no means top of the pile, but it is absolutely a fine steel for daily carry, and it is way better than some of the other stuff that CRKT has run around in the past. It's worth noting that there are other variants of this, including one in 1.4116, which is... it's not the same steel, we'll put it that way. But nonetheless, this one here is in D2 steel, and that's an absolutely fine steel. It's also a nice sized blade. I think it works out well in the design of it with the swedge and whatnot. That's good. So, to me at least, so the blade here is absolutely fine. And then finally, on the good side, the action on this guy is actually quite nice. What we can go ahead and do, put this guy down, no wrist movement, deploys 100% reliably. And in fact, on the close-up, is reasonably nice as well. So, to me at least, that's what's good here. Is it's got a very nice action. It's got a blade in D2, finally. It's got deep carry clip here. The ergos is surprisingly decent, and the two-texture design does add a little bit to it. On the great side, and honestly, the thing that makes this knife interesting is the FieldStrip 2 technology. So, this knife is actually a very easy knife to take apart. You don't need this screw, or this screw, or this screw, or maybe this one, or this one, or this one. In fact, you don't need to mess around with any of the screws to take this guy apart. I'm going to do a one-handed disassembly. Instead, you take this guy, hold that with your thumb, push it that direction, then push the rest of the way, and now you take the knife apart. Beautiful. Okay, now let's see. We got to do a little maintenance for it. Let's grab a little tiny bit of oil here. A little oil on the bearing race, and a little oil right here, and then a little oil on the detent ball path. And now we put the thing back together. And I'll give you a hint. Putting the thing back together is also pretty straightforward, right? Because you just set this down. And by the way, while I'm in this state, the bearings are locked in place. There's no way for these bearings to go anywhere, right? They're able to spin, but they can't do anything else, right? Because there is a little tube that's been pressed in around them. So I can be, dunking this thing in a creek, and this isn't coming out, this isn't coming out. There is literally, everything is attached to the knife, and so to put it back together, you just stack everything back up sandwich style. Then you grab this thing with everything put back together, and it can't hurt to put the blade down like that. Pull, and there you go. We are back reassembled. No blade play, no concerns, no questions, just beautiful, slightly improved action. That's good. That's smart. That's really, really nice. And this is better than the first generation FieldStrip, which was a lot more complicated, right? Because here you had this little lever that you had to move over, and you needed to spin this backspacer out of the way, and it required these knives to run on Teflon washes, which resulted in an action that is someplace between fine and not great at very, very best, right? So this second generation FieldStrip is just good. It's really, really good. And it's super easy to use. It's super intuitive. You can show it to anybody and they can maintain their knife in like 30 seconds. It is absolutely beautiful and it's a brilliant idea. It's not something that everybody needs, I don't think. I'm not going to say any knife without it is inadequate, but it is really nice. I like it a lot. And so to me, what's great about this knife 100% is the FieldStrip 2, which is just a brilliant idea and is really well implemented here. One other thing actually that's worth noting, some people are, well, what if the pivot comes out of adjustment? Well, that's easy, right? If things get a little bit too loose, and actually I should show you how it works now that I'm thinking about it. So what happens when I move this button here? You're going to see a little piece come out in both of these that will kind of engage and capture. Yeah, see, now we've got that little piece there, that little piece there. And that grabs onto these studs here, which have little lips on them. And there you go. Problem solved. But anyways, you can actually adjust the basically protrusion of those studs to tighten everything up, make sure everything's perfect. But in my experience, it's been good to go out of the box. Oh, can't put it back together with that in that mode. Then snap things together, put it back down. And again, we are back in perfect shape. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I like that a lot. That's just a smart idea. So, to me, that's what's great. On the bad side, to start with, the price on this guy is a little up there if you take out of account the FieldStrip, right? If it is a D2 liner lock, this is way overpriced at 99 bucks. But the thing is, it's unique. It has a system that very few other knives do, and you know what? I'm willing to give them that price for that, right? That seems complicated. It's well done. I like it. I am impressed. The price I'm not going to complain about, and especially given that they're using a steel that's worth a damn. Okay, no problem. Speaking of that, they actually offer another version of this knife that is DLC black and thing, but where the steel has been replaced with 1.4116 steel, which is not a great steel. I mean, it's easy to sharpen, which is good because you're going to be doing it all the time, right? But that seems like a really weird choice, right? To change something cosmetic about the knife and then change the thing that's most important. The edge retention on the blade, generally speaking. That's a weird place to sacrifice a dime, right? You know, I feel like they could have made that 110 and put a real steel in it and still been better off, right? That feels really weird. So as you're looking at it, make sure that you're buying this version with the D2 or the one in S35 VN, but I wouldn't go for the 14116 unless you really, really like sharpening and want to do it a lot. Next thing, this is, by the way, one weird thing about the D2 choice, which again is so much better than the rest of what they're running around generally, that no complaints, but I'd like to see something truly stainless here. This is a knife that is so very, very easy to maintain and to not really need to do a lot of maintenance on. It'd be really cool to see a run of this in like LC200N or something like that. I mean, Van X, I'm not holding my breath there, but even LC200N would be really cool just because it is a steel that literally won't rust at all. And so you can maintain this without ever having to do any maintenance on it. You don't have to worry about wetness. You don't have to, it's just a completely, I think that would be a really nice fit. And so I hope that someday they're going to try and think about, hey, let's upgrade the steel again. Maybe that's the place they could go. That'd be really nice. Next thing, this guy absolutely has a bit of a pocket peck and flip it tab, and more importantly, the corners on it are a little sharp. If I zoom in a little bit here, what you're going to see is, yeah, those corners not exactly rounded. And as a result, this is going to attack whatever's in your pocket, pecking on whatever's in your pocket all day long. like an angry little bird of some variety. Not the end of the world, but it is a thing. Next thing, the lanyard hole on this, I feel like they could have made this a little bit bigger. Then I could have gotten my entire belt through it, right? This is a big lanyard hole. I don't think it's particularly ugly. It's a part of the design, but holy cow, what kind of lanyards is Ken Onion running these days? Good Lord. This is a big, beefy freaking lanyard hole. And so that's a little weird. And by the way, though, the way that they did this lanyard hole, and this is another really smart thing, had they done a punch-through lanyard hole, it would have actually broken the FieldStrip, right? Because then you couldn't have taken off one of the scales. So doing it in this way, in the backspacer with the cutouts, makes the FieldStrip work even with a lanyard in there, which actually is very smart again. You can tell that, well, Ken Onion's designed a lot of knives, and he does a good job of it, right? So I appreciate that. Next thing, the choil length on this, a little weird. They could go a little bit longer, and then they would have avoided a little bit of this smile here, and it would, frankly, work a little bit better for fingers that are a little larger than mine, right? Next thing, the blade stock on this guy is relatively thick. This is actually quite thick, I would argue. I mean, if we put this up next to the PM2, we are in similar leagues in terms of blade stock thickness, and we really don't need to be. But more importantly, we have a very thick grind on this. This is not a well-grounded knife particularly. It's a little better down at the body here, but we just see a very wide bevel. I would have liked to see them make this knife a little bit thinner at the edge there. It would just cut a little bit better. I don't like seeing grinds this thick, right? It's going to be durable, but it's, I don't know. I want to see them either thin out the blade a little bit, which frankly would not be a bad thing generally speaking, or at the very least grind this a little harder so you come to a thinner edge and it would just cut better, right? Next thing, this is just over the 3.5-inch line. If we hold this up and measure this like a copwood, we're looking at 3.5 some odd inches. That's enough. And in some places, look, the 3.5-inch line isn't super important in a lot of places, but there are definitely places in the country where this has just become a felony, and this extra, whatever, 0.1 inch, not doing any good for you, so just keep it under the line. And then finally on the bad side, this guy is pretty heavy. If I'll go ahead and put this guy down on a scale here, what we see here is that we are coming in at 4.3 ounces for about 3.5 inches of blade. Yeah, it's a little on the heavy side. Not the end of the world, and given it's got some extra complexity, but whatever. To me, at least, that's what's bad, is that it's pretty heavy. It's just over 3.5 inches. The blade stock is thick, with a reasonably thick grind here, unfortunately. The choil length is a little short. The lanyard hole is a little huge. It's pocket pecking. It's crying out for a version in a really stainless steel. And they're offering a DLC version, which is 1.4116 steel, which, guys, no. And the price is a little bit up there, but again, with everything they're doing, okay, whatever. On the ugly front, there's only one ugly issue here, and that is that you might be thinking, well, Nick, this looks great, but can I get a version that's nicer? Well, you could. CRKT made a version of this that was S35VN steel, which is a great steel, one of my very favorites, as well as a really nice engraving and whatnot. But they killed it before it started. They made it a limited edition, such that those are no longer at all purchasable, period, right? And so what could have probably been the very best knife that CRKT made this year, you can't freaking buy. I can't even get one. That ain't great, right? That's so it just kills me that they make high-end versions of really nice designs, and then they don't make any of them practically. So I think they did like 50, and come on, guys. It feels like kind of a screw you to their customers when it's like, we're going to make something great and you can't get one. I hate that. I hate that so very, very much, and I'm hoping that they're going to relaunch this in a higher-end version, maybe with a partner store or something like that, in a quantity that people can actually purchase, because doing it like that is just a slap to the face of your customers. I hate that so very much. Limited editions need to be limited entirely. So to me, that's what's ugly, is that they made a high-end version, but you can't buy one. The final conclusion, though, honestly, I think this is some of the best of what CRKT does, right? It's a CRKT through and through, and in a variety of ways. It's quite weird, and that's an important thing, right? CRKT is good at doing things that no one else is doing, and this FieldStrip, which I think of still on the home front, is very, very much that, right? And it's a solid knife still overall, with fine design, decent ergos, deep carry, a fine blade, a nice action, and then this really exceptional feature in the FieldStrip too. That's good. It's also a little on the pricey side for a D2 line of lock. It's got an insane version that's the same price, but way No. It's got the sharp pocket pecker. The lanyard holds huge. Choil could use a little bit of beefing up. The stock and grind could use a little bit of beefing down. It's a bit long, a little heavy, and they made an awesome version of the knife, and then they insta-killed it because, who would want a nice version of this knife? Nobody. Come on. Overall, though, everybody, Cricket, come on, you're killing me. But overall, I think this was a really nice first knife in the FieldStrip 2 world, right? This is kind of their halo for the FieldStrip 2, and I like it. I think it's really well done, and it gets stuff done, and it works well, and it's built well enough to feel pretty good. Is a knife that absolutely feels solid in the pocket. I appreciate that very much. But to be fair here, the knife is mostly interesting because of the FieldStrip thing. If this were just a vanilla D2 liner lock at this price and design, it'd be a little hard to recommend at this price, right? Especially in a world where D2 liner locks are available, every damn day for $35. That's not necessarily what's impressive. You have to want the FieldStrip here. If that's not appealing to you, then I don't think this knife is going to be something you're after. But I can see it being a super compelling choice. I can see that FieldStrip making a difference. I'm picturing somebody who works in an environment where they are regularly surrounded by blowing grit, or something like that, such that, when they carry a conventional knife, things gum up regularly and get problematic, right? That's one possibility. Or maybe you're regularly being covered in some varieties of liquids or sticky things. You work on a maple syrup farm, and you're constantly getting syrup in your knife. That's not going to clean out and make a good action for damn near anything. And so this is a knife that is beautiful in that if you wanted to, you could keep a bucket of water in the back of your freaking truck and clean this guy out in the bucket of water in between, before you go into the next, I don't know what you do as a maple farmer. You go to the next tree. Either way, you could go between trees, right, and get everything working and set up again and get everything working beautifully. Yeah. Okay, great. And that's great. So I think that's where this is going to excel. If you want the ability to maintain your knife damn near instantly in any situation, without any kind of fiddliness, without any tools, without any other thing, this is going to be excellent. So ultimately, I think this guy is a great debut knife for FieldStrip 2. I think it's a fine knife overall, and I think it could very much, if you need that particular feature set, be a bona fide good addition to your collection. Hope this has been interesting to you and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.